boy, we come down to jam. Jumping in sun and rain. As carnival belong to the fans. It's all about the game. So tell them that we don't fear no one. It's all about the game. Game, game. It's all about the game. So tell them meet me up on the stage. Jumping like I'm insane. But this is time to misbehave. It's all about the game. And you can't lock me down in no cage. It's all about the game. Game, game. Man, they're coming for it. I hear them boys say they're coming for it. Carnival, we won't be running, coming for it. But tell them we don't wait for Jamaica. No lady moves who no care for time. But when we're coming for it, so I hope you back it real strong. Coming for it, cause they can only play when they dance round. Coming for it, show them how we turn it up.
Welcome back to Island Tea with your faves, Kevon and Amali, and Azim on the ones and 96s, and Jade on the OBS and the mouse. But we are now jumping into Espresso. What's the problem, Jade? Do you have a problem?
Always.
Jade upset with me. So,
normal.
So we're now jumping into Espresso with the infamous Wingrove Williams. Welcome.
It's always a pleasure to be at Win FM. Thank you.
This is some serious nostalgia for me, eh? But at Bastia, we just have to put it out there. The birthplace of champions.
Birthplace of champions.
Forever and ever.
Forever and ever. All right. Don't challenge me on that. No Washi Wildcats could challenge that. Forever and ever. Jade got on she orange today. Jade is a Washi student, so she never experienced the awesomeness of being at Bastia.
Condolences.
Well, it's not too late. Not too late.
Jade, come back to high school. But,
thank you.
But, how we like to do it, we like to give you the opportunity to tell the listeners and viewers a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Well, most persons would know me already. Locally, regionally, Wingrove Williams, leader of the Grandmasters Band, formerly leader of the GI Brass International, affectionately known as the Brass, and also a member of the most national or most local celebrated band, Element and the GIs.
Right.
A man of many talents, many hats.
Well,
you get the modesty, right? This is modesty.
Right.
No, watch it, right? This is the thing. You just see Mr. Hicks just walking around doing anything, and you don't even know the wealth of experiences and contributions that he's made in music. Not only just in St. Kitts, but across the world and the region, right? So, Mr. Hicks, how did you get started in music?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was brought up in a musical family from both sides of the spectrum. My mother, as a matter of fact, since I said my mother, she's still presently a choir member in the New Herrnhut Moravian Church in St. Thomas.
Oh, wow.
As I speak to you, right? And if you know the Hicks part of my family, was always, it's a traditional music family. So I grew up. But apart from coming from a musical family, in my early childhood, I was surrounded by music. I actually grew up as a youth across Irish Town.
Oh.
And you would know in those times, Irish Town and Newtown was flooded with what we call rum shops.
Oh, yeah, man.
On either sides of the road.
Yeah, man, we know that.
And those were the entertainment spots. So you had music from early in the morning until late at nights. That's another aspect. But even more important, my immediate neighbor was the leader of a clown band. That is that is a band that play for the folklore, the clowns at Christmas. With tambourine, triangle, and what they call it a shack pan, but we know it as maracas.
The maracas, yeah.
But it was made from pan, with beads and so on. And at the age of 8, actually, I took over that band.
Oh wow.
At 8.
So you've been a band leader since the age of 8.
Since the age of 8.
Wow.
And surprising, you would not believe, but the other members of that band was my other 2 brothers, Kenrick, who is in St. Thomas now, and Nigel in St. Kitts, you know.
Also very much involved in music.
Yeah. So it was music all around. And then the other aspect is that I had no alternative but to go to church, as most of us would have at that time. And I was surrounded by music in the church too. So music was always a part of me.
Okay, so you began like in folklore groups, and it just goes kind of around you.
Yes.
Nice.
And then and I said my immediate neighbor, but just a few houses from me too, there was also a band house that housed the Joseph Liebert Orchestra.
Oh, okay.
So music was always all around.
All around.
Literally, it was always around.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure as you came of age and went on, there were also some persons who would have contributed to your musical development. And I know you playing mainly the trumpet, but having been under your tutelage, I know that you have your musical expertise is wide and varying. So how did you get introduced to the trumpet?
Well, as you said that, I was just playing the guitar before I got here.
Yes, yeah.
For fun? Just playing
practice and having fun with some other guys.
Must be nice.
With some structures and so on. But actually started music on my own. But then, and I knew I wanted, like most youths of the day, everybody wanted to go to piano classes. It was the only way to get a formal music education. But my mother could not afford to send all 3 of us to piano classes. So she sent us to the Defense Force Band, to the camp, because herself and Val Morris sang on the Moravian Church choir. So she spoke to him and said, well, at a very young age, we'll get us there. So that is where we got some started off formal training.
Right.
And apart from Val Morris, we were lucky to had tutelage by one former minister, Elroy Christopher, right, who was also a formal organ player.
Okay.
Yes, so he encouraged us to do music examinations.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, most persons in St. Kitts did not even know that music examinations was done on other instruments other than the piano. Because the only persons they knew did music exams as persons who went
to
piano classes. Right.
And as a matter of fact, I was the first person, and perhaps to date still the only person, that entered students for examinations in other instruments other than piano.
Oh, wow.
Saxophones, trumpets, baritone, trombone, guitar.
Definitely. I can attest.
Other than piano, in both the Associated Board of the Royal Schools of Music and CXC.
Ah, yeah.
As a matter, yes, yeah, and CXC.
So, I mean, we see how you would have benefited from the tutelage of musicians here around the island at the time. But you mentioned in your opening that you are part of one of the most locally celebrated groups.
Yes,
yes, and how was that experience?
That was an awesome experience. We work hard, play hard, played hard, practice hard, traveled a lot. And as you travel, you learn, and you continue learning, because actually when we started traveling, it was more of a pastime stuff. And I could remember We had just come back from St. Thomas, and everybody in St. Thomas was saying, boy, this band has some good prospect. So we thought it best to go to Antigua, not knowing what we were up against. So we thought we were going to Antigua for an engagement to meet other musicians, because in those days, Antigua had many professional musicians.
Yeah.
You had the Lavis Count Brass with guys like Prescott Cooper, awesome trumpeter, Rawdon keyboard player, lots of good players, the Mason Brothers. But when we got off the plane in Antigua, young teenagers, we saw an advertisement saying, Leeward Islands Brass-O-Rama.
Brass-O-Rama.
We said, well, we got scared now. We knew nothing about the competition. But, it was a promotional stunt.
Right.
That one used. And then the guys working on the airport. Where these little guys going? Then we played with Lavis Count at Mellock in a few nights. Every individual musician in Lavis Count Brass was better than every individual musician in our band.
Right.
However, what we had in our band going for us at that particular time was the genius of Ellie Matt's musical arrangement skill.
Yes, man.
And it mesmerized the people there. And from the musical abilities that we experience, we recognize, and communications with the musicians, we recognize what we had to do. And it did not take us a long time to get our musical skills up to that level.
Right.
But we practiced day in and day out. And after a while, persons just could not believe this was the same band. That,
I hear stories from not only some of the local musicians here from that time who would tell me about early morning practice sessions, 6 o'clock down Village Bay and all kind of things. But even from regional musicians, like sometimes I travel, and once I tell people like, oh, you're from St. Kitts, like, say, buy no element, buy no DJ's Brass. By the time they come here and they play with Byron Lee and the Dragonaires and eat up them fellas, and the Brass-O-Rama is something that always comes up. Like the Dominicans tell me about this Brass-O-Rama, Trinidadians tell me about this competition Brass-O-Rama. I guess it's maybe unfortunate that the brass bands have kind of, died out a bit. I guess given the coming in of technology.
Well, they also had competitions for the combo bands too,
Oh.
So it was twofold, non-brass and brass.
Oh, okay.
So there were twofold competitions.
And the jazz brass, Element and jazz brass will compete in both these kinds of competitions?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you spoke about that, because how that came about, they used to have a Caribbean Brass-O-Rama competition. So, and each of these countries during Carnival would have a Brass-O-Rama competition. So the winner from each competition would compete for the Caribbean title.
The regional title.
St. Thomas hosted that competition. Just like how St. Kitts hosts the Caribbean Talented Teen,
right.
And Anguilla hosts the Leeward Islands competition,
right.
And Barbados used to host the Regional Caribbean Song Competition.
Okay.
Same as St. Thomas hosted that at Lionel Roberts Stadium. So the winner in Trinidad, I could remember the first time we entered, the winner in Trinidad was one Gemini Brass. And you had Milan the Kings was the winner in St. Thomas. Taka and the Playboys, the winner in St. Croix. Lavis Count Brass, and all the winning bands around the region.
Right.
So tell me, how
usually the Trinidad bands used to dominate that competition. However, that year we won the competition.
Wow.
Ends up right? Kitty-shans, and those were the days when kitty-shans, just like how everybody's coming to St. Kitts now to seek employment and a better way of life. Persons from St. Kitts and around used to go to the Virgin Islands to seek a better way of living. So lots of nationals was living in the Virgin Islands at that time. Kitty Shan slept in Lionel Roberts Stadium. How they were so proud of it.
I still hear stories about this. I'm telling you. I still hear stories.
They slept. I mean, a band, something they never imagined.
This is the show where the band started with their backs turned to the crowd.
Yes.
But dude, watch it. I hear the story in Trinidad. It's Trinidadians tell me the story. About this band come there and they start with the back turned to the crowd, and then they just turn around and started playing and whatever. But, dude.
Well, yeah, we used to go to Trinidad, and when they fence holiday in parking lot, they put us to the back.
Wow.
And you know what happened? We moved everybody from the front to the back.
Only way to do
The
it.
back became the front.
Only way to do it.
But we had 13 consecutive years of Trinidad Carnival,
Wow.
Yeah, so we had a lot of good times. It was hard times, because when you're from a small country, you have to work twice as hard.
Definitely.
And as you've been out there, so you know a lot of it. I mean, we had to not only play as a band performing, and we also had to find ourselves being the accompaniment band for all of the artists.
Wow. So artists like the Sparrow.
Yes, so actually we knew everybody's show. I was from Mousetrap, Sparrow, Shadow, Kitchen, Explain, Rose, all of the major acts of the day.
Wow.
Short Shirt from Antigua. And not only, so when we leave here, we travel to Toronto, we move on to Ottawa, Montreal, New York. We were the accompanying band for the acts.
Wow. And I mean, no matter where these artists came from, they must have had a supreme trust in the skill of the band.
Certainly. And it helped us to be employed for most of the major shows.
Right.
Because once the artists knew
you were going to be
the band were going to be there.
You know that you're working.
Yep.
Good
You were saying something, Kevin?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a while back, that the brass practice is dying down. How you feel about passing on the brass skills to the modern generation?
Well, as I said, the skills are here. The problem is continuing the skills. Continuing.
Right.
But as I say, music and everything about music is a cycle. It goes around, things will just go around. For instance, in our day, arrangements, treatment of songs or treatment of compositions was the hallmark. If, as in compose a song and bands was reproducing it, one would come to hear how you treat it.
How you treat it, yes.
They would not expect you to reproduce it.
Right.
Exact.
In the original form. So you find persons went to fetes who did not even dance.
Right.
They would have a drink and relax by the bar, just listening
To the music.
to the substance. Musical arrangements. Nowadays, the reproduction is almost the same.
Right.
You go on, persons use the stems and just replay what they hear.
Right.
So as I say, there's a time for everything and there's a circle. And those were the days, what was happening, it was not just happening in St. Kitts. In the days of the big bands and the big arrangement, it was happening throughout the world.
Right.
You'll remember, if you ever heard of the bands like Manjil and Earth, Wind and Fire, Kool and the Gang and Chicago and Police, the big band arrangements and so on. Even the reggae bands of the day with the big bands like Third World,
Right.
and those kinds of bands.
But
Steel Pulse.
it's interesting Kevin brought that up because I always feel that one of the problems why we don't see a lot of persons taking the music past, when we go to school we learn, or we go to class and we learn, is just a lack of opportunities to perform, which that is the fun of playing music. So a lot of people, we go to classes, we do music in school, but there's just not a lot of opportunities for us to perform. Like, you think that's part of the contributing factor why people don't take it further?
Yes, and that is something. Well, we have a new ministry now of culture, and that is something that we have to pay attention to.
Right.
Maybe we need, and I would not take the point. Some persons would tell me that the country is small and we have a small population, but the population was smaller long ago.
Right.
And we had lots of performances. As a matter of fact, talent shows
Yes.
was in abundance. Almost every weekend there was some form of talent show.
Yes. Yes. I think maybe we need to focus on bringing back some of the venues. I know back in the day I would hear stories about the schoolhouses being used for some of these things.
Yeah.
The of course the Bastia High School auditorium
Certainly.
was a big stage for some of these types of events.
The old Apollo Cinema.
Yes.
But we have more venues now than then. And larger venues.
Right.
And venues that are more acceptable, more accessible to this kind of technology and everything.
Right.
So we certainly could bring back talent. And that is where we used to source a lot of talent, Instrumentalists, vocalists,
Yeah, at the talent shows.
they came from those talent
Wow.
shows.
Well, you have been basically on the forefront, I would say, of different evolutions of Kittitian music. As a matter of fact, I think that the first, like, we're in a place now where the bands win, for instance, road match, right? There's only been one exception to that in the last however much years, which was Conway's. I think Grandmasters, which is a band that you are greatly associated with, I think you're the manager of the band.
Yes, I am.
Would have been the first band to kind of usher in this new
Yeah,
era,
this new, yeah.
right? So how was that evolution going from the big bands as Elimat, the Calypsonians, going into Grandmasters, and how did you manage to stay relevant as this thing moved?
Well, let me go back before I come to the relevance. Let's go back to the road match thing. Because it's only Calypsonians used to be in the road match before. So you're quite correct. Right? And this happened by accident, actually, It was not designed.
Story time.
It was not designed. It was in the early days. As a matter of fact, it was Grandmaster's first year, because second carnival, because we started the previous year, the 30th of November.
Oh.
And we were around town playing one of the songs from the Calypso tent, Google Jamming. And I could remember a guy by the name of Elvis. He used to work at FND, drive the little bus. Knocked me while I playing going up 4th Street. He said, "Boy, you all up and down playing Google Jamming, and all the other bands playing We Want Grandmasters." And we started playing it, and lo and behold, we won the road match. It was not by design. And other bands, Small Axe and then New Vibes, other bands took to it. And the fans, or the supporters of the bands, start supporting the bands for road match.
Oh.
And it made it difficult now for the individual artists
To
to
compete.
win the road match, because the bands weren't playing their songs now.
Right.
The individual
So
songs.
the Calypsonians used to depend on the bands to play their songs.
Certainly,
Right.
certainly.
Okay.
And that is why we came up with this new system of judging the road match. So the new system that was introduced two years ago
Right.
will enable anyone to win the road match. As a matter of fact, a few years ago when they had these songs on the stickle rhythm,
Right, stickle drum, yeah.
all these good songs. If they had the present system of today, one of those guys would have won.
Yeah,
the
Nature would have
match.
probably win it.
Nature would have probably won the world
Yeah.
match if the system had already introduced.
Existed, yeah. Wow.
You know, one of those guys would have won the world match because nobody have an advantage now.
Right. That's
The
interesting.
bands cannot go round and round and round and gain points now.
Right.
The same way a band could go to judging point and gain 1 point only. An artist can go there with a DJ or a band, whatever he chooses, and get the same point.
Right.
And he can go and do the same performance with a DJ or a band.
Right.
So you make
Interesting.
it equitable.
Yeah, level the playing field.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I mean, so
But back, that was the road branch.
Yes, yeah.
So back to relevant is by infusing new impetus all the time. Because don't care who you are, right? You cannot keep regenerating ideas.
right.
New ideas come from new persons. The Bible tells you that those who come after are better. Yeah, and after a while you'll just think different. So you have to be willing to adopt new ideas, new impetus, and that is what we keep on doing.
Right. So you're saying that
So there's an evolution.
evolution not only of Sankit's music on a whole, but even the individual bands, if they want to stay relevant,
Yes.
they have to continue to evolve the music.
Certainly.
Right. So what is the aim, I would say, of Grandmasters? Because the reason I'm asking this is it seems like there's a difficulty of Kittian bands and even artists to regain the level at which we've seen some of the previous bands gain, like the recognition regionally and internationally. So how do you think Grandmasters fits into that whole aim to try and do that? If it's an aim, and then what advice would you give to those who are now trying to reach to the same level that we've seen persons before reach?
Very good question. If I go back to the days of Element and the GIs, when we traveled to Antigua and we had heard that band and we asked the individual musicians how often they practice, those guys said they practice 6 hours daily. 6 hours daily.
Wow.
We adopted that. Not only that, you made a very good point. Why are we not getting to the level? Why are the music not promoted out there in the way it should be?
Right.
You're going to have to be professional. Guys are running from making music their profession.
Right.
That was the success of Element and the GI's brass.
They took that step.
You have to be willing to take that step. You cannot have 1 foot in and 1 foot out.
You can't be a hobbyist but expect professional results.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And that is the main. And this is what we have with lots of musicians. They don't want to make up their mind.
Yeah.
And it happened in the days of Element and the GIs too, Other bands attempt and they weren't as successful because of the same thing.
Right.
Undecided what they really want to do. And if you really want a music industry, look at Jamaica.
Right.
Yeah?
But I mean, if you're looking at Jamaica and people say, oh, they're big and whatever, but I always use examples like, say, even Anguilla, where you had like Banky Banks coming out of Anguilla, right? It's a smaller country, but again, the mindset and the belief in oneself. And like sometimes, like when I go and I meet and I talk to Banky, it's like in his mind, there was no option to not be successful. There was no option to not think this is what he does. He's an artist, he sings, and that's what he does. So the point that you made about being professional and taking that step and betting on yourself, I think is a very valid one. I mean, I could speak for myself. When I used to teach, so yeah, me and Mr. Hicks were co-workers at one point. When I left teaching and decided to go into entertainment and music and all this kind of things, it was a risk, but it was one that I felt I needed to take, right? And I think that mindset is not that I'm special or talented or whatever, but like you say, it's just the mindset, and I'm making up in mind that this is what I'm doing and this is who I am. So I think that is something that is greatly overlooked in our industry.
Yeah, that is what the problem is, and fellas have to decide what you really want to do. As a matter of fact, there's a whole lot of benefits to be derived from music. I could remember very well as a youth going to primary school, and some of my friends would say, boy, during the summer vacation, we are going to St. Thomas or St. Croix. And I used to wonder, how on earth would I get to go to St. Thomas or St. Croix when I have never even gone to Nevis? Now this is it. When I have never even gone to Nevis.
Nevis. Wow.
You know, and surprisingly, as soon as I started playing music, in a short time I was all over the world.
All over the world.
All over Europe, North America, the entire Caribbean, you know?
Yeah.
And I used to wonder, because as a youth, the first thing you're wondering, where would I get monies from to take a trip? You know?
Right.
Where? And when would that happen?
Wow. And music was an avenue for you to be able to see the world.
Yeah. I can always remember, and I always give my friends this scenario. I had a very good friend in St. Martin when I just started traveling, and I was about the age of 17, 18, and she was going to Holland to study.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you're going to Holland. I am going to New York next week, and you're you're going to Holland to study and live. So I'll never see you again, because I never dreamt, right? Do you know? She went to Holland in September. I went to New York. In October, I was in Holland, you know. In October, I was in Holland.
Imagine that. You just tell her you're going to see her again in
Didn't
November.
dream of it. No. I had no address, nothing. Holland is not St. Kitts. You know, I did not dream of, nowhere in my wildest dreams.
That you were going to be in Holland.
I thought within a month time I would be in Holland.
Wow. Music, eh?
Yeah, music.
Yeah, and I think that I'll take some time out to get a little mushy. Like, because I attended Bastille High School, and I wasn't afforded the opportunity to do music as a subject at the time, based on the electives. And I remember what happened was...
Well, I think when you were there, even the music was... We did not do CSEC music at the time.
At the time, right.
The person who did exams in the Royal Schools of Music. So only those who were actually interested.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I ended up joining the school band by almost like accident. The guy who was playing bass at the time, he broke his hand. And then I remember Mr. Hicks had approached me and asked me if I would want to come and join the band. And that experience, I think directly affected who I ended up becoming and what I ended up doing. Because through that experience, joining the band, having to learn to read sheets and all that stuff, things that I wouldn't have been doing. Also, I got involved in sound through that, because I don't know if you remember this, but the Trade Winds came and did a show in the auditorium one time, and
from the ship,
and there was nobody there to really do the sound. Ricky usually had done it, and that was my first opportunity actually mixing a band and stuff like that. And it's like, no, that's what I do for a living. So I mean, I really want to thank you for the influence you would have had on my life. It's something that I don't take for granted, and I know you've done the same to countless children and musicians, even those who don't do music, over your course teaching. So thank you for that.
Well, as I said, I tend to go back, because you had asked a question earlier about what I would say to persons or students aspiring to be musicians, and it's something Ian Hodge had said to me a very long time. Try to learn as much as you can about the art. You can never learn it enough. Try to learn as much as you can, and in a formal manner.
Right.
Because even though there are many excellent non-formal musicians, lots of persons suffer and cannot use the extent of their abilities because they have done things or started things the wrong way.
The wrong way, yes.
And if had they done it the correct way. And it's a funny thing, Some persons may not have had a formal training, but they live in a setting where they look at persons who are doing it formally and they adopt the style. Like you'd find if you go to the States, because there are so many formal education, many persons who play keyboards, even non-formal, play the correct way.
Yes, they have yes, that happens.
Plays the correct way. In St. Kitts now, because so many persons play in an unorthodox manner.
Right.
Other persons adopt it too.
Yeah.
And then run into trouble.
I could speak directly to that.
Okay.
I could speak directly to that.
Yeah. And it happened with all instruments.
Yeah.
So it's
you
to your benefit, to your advantage.
And so you really recognize the importance of a formal training.
Certainly.
Yeah, and like I said, you've been a music educator now for how many years?
For almost 30 years.
Wow. I mean, that's just incredible, Kevon.
Right. Because about over 10 years ago, I left. Yeah.
Boy, it seems like 5 years ago.
It seems like three. It feels like just the other day.
But I mean, I know you have to leave us pretty soon, so we'll wrap this up. But where do you see music going in the next 5-10 years in St. Kitts? What do you think we should be looking out for, and what do you think we have to do to prepare for it?
Music in St. Kitts News and the Federation has a very good prospect, right? The idea, I believe, it's organization, and we need some more leaders. Not enough persons are willing to take the risk or take chances. We need more groups. The more groups you have, more competition, better standard. That was one of the results for the high musical standard we had long ago. You had lots of groups and you had to compete, right? right now I think we are too relaxed or too dependent on someone. Everybody who finished music training, whether it's former individual class or school class, they think about being in one of the established groups.
Right.
Rather than getting together.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And forming a group of some, it could be
And
it could be an ensemble of a different nature.
Yes.
It does not have to be the regular band setting that you see.
Because the same evolution you spoke about is necessary, right?
It could be a saxophonist, a trumpeter, and a keyboard player.
Right.
And they do hotel gigs, they do concerts.
Right.
You know, the mindset has to change.
Yeah, for sure.
That to be a musician or a career musician, you have to play in a band.
You have to join your Vibes Grandmasters or something like that.
Yeah. And I believe that is our biggest setback.
Yeah.
Because that is what they're aspiring to.
Yes. Yes.
When there are so many other things that they can do. They could form a number of different ensembles.
And I think that's a real problem here in St. Kitts, like you said.
Yeah.
St. Kitts is one of the few islands you go to, and the variety of bands is so limited. So limited.
Certainly.
I have friends that would come here to visit and thing, and they say, "Oh, you know, I wanna go listen to some jazz," and it's like there are very few places and groups that play jazz. You know, maybe I told Carl Geary, see what he playing tonight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, it's a very valid point that you're making.
Let's say the guys leave school and they leave the school little symphonic orchestra. Where else they go?
Yes.
But they could form their own.
But Mr. Hicks, the funny thing about it is that that's exactly what would have happened with, and I think I came out of the Bastille Hay Symphonic Band at a time when there were a lot of amazing musicians.
Certainly.
So we ended up forming the band and ended up starting royalties, right? So you had Trevor Queely, you had Ron Clark, you had myself, all coming out of that, and we were playing in school and
Dijon and so on.
Dijon and all of these guys.
That is the same thing guys can do and form different types of bands.
Yeah, and I think the effect of royalties as we started it, they're still being seen now with the hotel bands and stuff like that. So imagine if we had that happening time and time again. Wow, I haven't even thought about it in that way.
Yeah, and that is the problem we are having. Everybody look at one avenue only.
Right.
When they could have various different settings.
Wow.
Yeah. It could be a guitarist, a violinist, and a clarinetist.
Wow.
They form an ensemble.
Right, and you do your own thing.
And they do lots of engagements. And persons will glad to go out and listen.
And so
Rather than hear
different
different. You know? You go to a restaurant or a bar, evening out, hotel, you know?
Yeah, you know,
Rather than just
live
the
music is
same
nice.
thing,
Yeah.
rather than just the regular Friday and Saturday night
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And that form of employment could be everyday employment.
Yeah. You know, that's something that I'm really hoping to see happen back. When I talk to members, like guys who are members of bands like Toucan, guys who are members like you said, Jay's Brad, like they were making livings off of their talent, the God-given ability, and being able to feed their family. I think that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So hope, I think we really need to push to get back to that, where you could really have examples of success coming through music.
You see what happened, though, long ago, persons did not, well, even my parents and other parents, luckily I came from a musical family, but persons were skeptical about their children taking on a musical career. And it came from far back. If you were to go back to some of the virtuosos and guys like Mozart, Tchaikovsky, Bach, and Liszt and all, some of those guys had become junkers, womanizers, and things like that. And so some parents was always skeptical that if you are on stage, you may go in the wrong direction.
There was a stigma attached to it.
Yes, stigma. But there are stigmas to everything.
To everything.
But I figure you're on stage and you might be involved in alcohol,
right,
or drugs and so on.
I had to face that too, so I know exactly
Yeah,
what
you
you're
know.
saying. And like you said,
Which
I
is
think,
not so.
you know, and I think it's for instance, people know that I tour and stuff with bands, and there's this image of like what my life must be because I tour with bands. So, like, watch it, when I go, I work, I go back to the hotel, I jump on a plane.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that glamorous. It's just that I'm lucky enough, I'm blessed enough to be able to do things I love on a daily basis. But people have these images of what they of what their life is.
Mind you, it's coming of age now.
Right.
It's coming of age now. It's not like it used to be
Right.
long ago. So, and music is a exceptionally high income for many economies.
For most around the world, entertainment
Around the world,
contributes to GDP.
Yeah, we talk about it here
Crazy.
all the time on the show, how, you know,
Yeah.
these entertainment, you know, what do we call them? Entertainment bursts. They create massive economic stimulation. Like, you know,
Certainly.
if we talk about all the time, music festival, the hotels booked out, the hairdressers booked out, the nail salons booked out, the makeup artists booked out, you know, the clothing stores, the car rentals, food places.
Carnival is an example.
Right.
Yep.
Because I already heard many small business owners, persons with little boutiques and so on, crying out saying, Lord, if there is no carnival, I cannot open my business next year.
Next year. Wow.
What am I going to do? I depend on the carnival period of December month to get me back on track.
Yep. Yep. It's interesting that you said that, you know, it's interesting that
And
you said
that's the
because
power of music.
yeah, I don't think people recognize how music and culture on a whole just penetrates every area of society, everything we do. As a matter of fact, there's a saying that nothing moves without culture, nothing moves without music. So, I mean, it is definitely a career path that could make you successful and live comfortably. And I like I said before, I think it's a beautiful thing when there's an environment and a situation where people can live off of their God-given abilities and talents.
And the thing that they're certain of, it's the only thing that will not perish.
Yes. Lives on.
Lives on. All things shall perish from under the sun. Music alone shall live.
You hear that? You hear that? All right. Music alone shall live. But I'm going to call you Mr. Hicks because that's all I know you as. Mr. Hicks.
I get a cuss. It sounds like one calling me Wingrove.
Right, Mr.
I'm
Hicks.
so accustomed to
Hey,
it.
I'll never call him anything else. Mr. Hicks, thank you very much for joining us today. It was lovely. You know, we have people on the live bigging you up, saying that, you know, you're a gem to the nation, and, you know, everyone is saying that, you know, you're basically like the man in the music. You know, thank you for your contributions, everybody.
Yes.
You know, calling out your steel bands and everything. So, you know, thank you very much for your contributions.
Again, it was a great pleasure. If I tell you something, I know you called me and I had an idea what I'm coming here for, but I did not know exactly. But I know
Good.
if you ask me to come, it has to be something related to music. So
Right.
I said I didn't think I had to prepare anything.
No, man, and this was a great interview, man.
Right.
You gave us so many gems.
Yeah, and things that we
knowledge.
didn't even know. I mean, you know, a lot of us passed through your wing, in Bastia High. But a lot of us don't even, we didn't even know a lot of the things you were a part of. So it shed some good light on the massive work you've been doing.
Well, it's a pleasure, as I said before, to be at Win FM, and I look forward to be back at your pleasure.
Oh yeah, man, definitely.
Of course, we of course have to have you back. So thank you again for joining us. That was your. See, we're gonna finish nice and early, so because we have Sandra who likes to come in the studio and argue with us.
Because I have a class at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So.
No, you come on. If you keep it back, we'll keep it back.
Really well.
So thank you very much for joining us on Island Tea. That was your +1 episode, and it is now Friday. So go have some fun this weekend. Be safe,
Kevon.
And